Welcome back, folks. Today we are talking about product execution. Product execution is all about how you use data and how you make decisions. After having conducted over 500 interviews both inside companies and as a product coach, these are my collection of top 5 most common mistakes that I see. So let's get into it. The first one is, again, framework on Rails. When it comes to product execution, there are a bunch of frameworks out there and people again take these frameworks to heart and they follow it word by word, line by line, structure by structure, and that just does not work out. Usually this ends up in people being extremely rigid, not being able to adapt, and really having a minor panic situation when they're probed in one direction or the other. People will often take this framework and just go through the motions. I recently worked with a candidate with whom we were discussing product execution, and he seemed to do decently well, but I wanted to see his notes after the interview during the debrief, and I asked him why he didn't share his screen because it might have helped him quite a bit. And at that point, he revealed to me that he has a full template pre-written into a Google Doc that he just fills out as we go through the prompt. I promise you, anyone who's well calibrated in interviewing people will be able to detect that very, very quickly. And this person really struggled to respond when I probed him in different directions and tried to move him around. I could clearly see that he's stuck on Rails and he has to go through his specific process. Now, usually folks who are falling into this trap of having a framework on Rails, they are often making some of the other mistakes that we're going to talk about as well. An example of delivering a framework on Rails during a product execution question is conducting a very deep user segmentation, the same way you would do in a product sense question for a product execution question. It is not really needed. If you are breaking down every single user segment into every single possibility, you're most likely following a framework that is saying do user segmentation. The reason is that for something like product execution, when they're trying to see what metrics you would come up with for the segments or for the product as a whole, every single segment doesn't necessarily aid your decision making in any way. And we want to remember that we want to use the framework as a decision guidepost. We want every single part of that framework to help us make a decision or to help us give more information using which we will make a bigger decision later on in the prompt. It is not a mandatory step that you have to go to. Only ones who are delivering a framework on Rails will feel like every step is a mandatory step to go to. And this mistake of a framework on Rails usually happens with another mistake, which I call the metrics dump, which is the second mistake we're going to cover shortly. So how do we mitigate this problem of framework on Rails? Just like we discussed in the product sense video, we really want to question the framework and understand why is the framework the way it is. And we want to extract components out of that framework to understand their true meaning and use that as part of our toolkit, so that when it comes time to actually give an answer to a question, you can dynamically create your own framework. A trick I often use with some folks that are doing mock interviews with me is imagine that your entire portfolio is on the line. And if you get this decision wrong, your entire portfolio is going to go away with it. What I've seen work naturally in this situation is that people tend to fall back to a very simple, logical sense of decision making, saying, hey, if my entire portfolio is on the line, I really need to think deeply about this. And I need to know what are those key questions I need answers to be able to answer this product execution or product sense question in its entirety. I am not going to make a hasty decision. I'm not going to skip any steps. My entire portfolio is on the line. I am going to ask every single important question, even if it sounds dumb. And usually people end up creating their own framework as a result. So try this as an experiment with yourself. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. We've seen it work for quite a few people, where if you imagine your portfolio on the line, naturally your mind wants to ask every single question in order to de-risk your portfolio. And as a result, you start coming up with your own framework for what questions need to be answered before you can have a final perspective on this question. So that is framework on Rails, mistake number 1. The second most common mistake I see in the product execution question is a complete metrics dump. Candidates often state every single metric that comes to mind. There's no rationale, and every metric is seen as equally important. What is an example of this? Let's say we're talking about success metrics for Spotify, the music streaming platform. We'll have candidates that will say number of song plays, number of pauses, number of forwards, number of playlists, number of minutes listened to, number of artists liked, number of artists searched, number of albums viewed, number of browses, etc. The reality of the matter is, yes, some of these metrics will be needed, but they're more operational metrics. They're needed for that specific product team to be able to dig deep and understand whether things are going well or not. They're not really needed for the CEO or the CPO for whom we're trying to say, how would you determine success of this product? Because when we're talking about a question that is saying, how would you determine success for a product like Spotify, we really are talking about top-level product metrics, not individual-level feature metrics. So the mitigation to this problem is to first determine who we're building these metrics for and what story we're trying to tell through these metrics. Are we trying to tell them how every single feature is working, or how this entire product as a whole is working in the market? And so there's this important part about understanding the difference between product success and feature usage. So a metric like number of playlists or number of songs browsed, while it might mean something to the individual team that is running playlists or owning playlists or the player experience, that is not something that the CEO of Spotify is going to be looking at on a daily basis. If some major issue happens and they're root causing from there on, and the problem came to be that somehow playlists got deleted, that's a different story. But when you're determining success for the top line of a product, individual feature metrics and product success metrics are different. So refrain from doing a complete metrics dump. Most likely this is happening in conjunction with delivering a framework on Rails, where you're not thinking through exactly what you're saying and you're just going through the motions. The third mistake I see candidates make is having a very weak product rationale. What we mean by this is that candidates often miss what is the real reason this product actually exists. And what this ends up resulting in is having very superficial goals or completely missing the rationale altogether. So to be able to go beyond this issue, I like to run the founder test. Imagine the founder in your mind, and imagine the day that this founder is saying, I'm going to start this company. Imagine what world that founder is living in, that some problems have already been solved. If you go back to Spotify, iTunes already existed, and then Spotify still found its place. So what was the rationale of the founder to say, hey, iTunes exists, created by one of the most iconic companies of all time, I'm still going to take them on and build something new? What is the rationale there? And if you think deeply about it, you'll find that iTunes was a product where you had to buy every single song by itself or every single album by itself. So the upper limit of how much money you would spend is variable. Whereas what the founder of Spotify said is flat fee, $10 a month or whatever, and you can listen to as much as you want. This enables people to also reduce piracy, because the effort of listening to music is so low with Spotify that you get access to literally all the music in the world for one flat fee, that it's not really worth the effort to go for pirated music because it might cost you more. Because with Spotify, you can get all the music in the world for just a flat fee of $10 every month, it really incentivizes you to just stick with the simpler option and not worry about trying to find that same music for free somewhere, because every time you need new music, you have to pay. That is how the world worked with iTunes. And if you're a product professional working towards the monetization side, you will realize that one of the hardest things to do in product or in business is to get customers to open up their wallets. And with iTunes back in the day, not Apple Music, but iTunes back in the day, every time they wanted a new kind of music, they would have to open up their wallet again, which is very, very high friction. So when you think deeply about why that product actually exists and why the founder decided, hey, I'm going to create this, you'll have a better opportunity to get to the true product rationale for why is this product actually existing, and that will help you justify the metrics that you pick. Mistake number 4 is having a very superficial user journey. Now, to some of you, this might sound too trivial that I can't believe people are making this mistake. This is what I thought as well, but apparently it does happen quite a bit. So oftentimes what will happen is that candidates have a very, very superficial user journey. They really simplify it down way more than they should simplify it. And these are likely already candidates who are performing a framework on Rails. So I'll give you an example. If you're talking about a product like Zoom or Google Meet, I've seen user journeys from candidates who have more than 5 to 7 years of experience. These are not new candidates that would say, get Zoom, create an account, join a call, message on the call, and end the call. All of those steps are valid. But there's a lot more going on. And of course, it seems easy to see it now because the example is so clear, and maybe I'm saying it in a tone that obviously communicates to you that there's a lot more to it than this, but you'd be surprised at how many candidates with a good number of years of experience just oversimplify the user journey. A product like Zoom or Google Meet is a fairly simple user journey, but if you imagine your entire airport experience or your Uber rides experience, there's a lot more steps and a lot more nuances, and people often miss those. So the mitigation to all of this is just to think more deeply about the user journey. I wish it was like a magic strategic skill that I could pass on to you right now, but the truth of the matter is, don't ignore anything. But at the same time, you want to have a balance that you don't go into every single possible action as well, where I recommend having a differentiation between major actions that people need to take and minor steps that people need to take. And sometimes the minor steps don't need to be called out. So for example, if it is something like Zoom and you're installing it, you'll probably have to do an account creation. That is a major step. Within the account creation, you'll probably have to put in a first name, last name, or a name combined, and maybe have an email address of sorts, maybe a password. All of these I would consider major steps because there's friction at each of these steps. Now, you might also have to sign the license agreement that I accept all of these terms and conditions. Well, that could be seen as a major step for the legal team. For a product team, we really don't have a whole lot of leverage in what we can do. We're instructed that this has to be part of the journey. There's fewer things that you can do over there to really change the experience. Maybe you can create an auto scroll. We're instructed that these are the guidelines that you have to follow, and we end up following those. So from a product perspective, yes, we could talk about it as a major step, that this is where some drop-offs are occurring. But this is pretty standard practice that every person who's using a new software knows that they have to go through. So I wouldn't expect ours to be exceptionally bad, ensuring that what we've built is fairly reasonable. So unfortunately for this mistake, there's no magical solution. You just have to think really deeply about the user journey. Don't skip out meaningful steps. Everything on the journey where friction can occur is important. The fifth one is top-down metrics. This is one of the most subtle mistakes that occurs in product execution questions, and it is not visible to the untrained eye. But if there is an interviewer who's highly calibrated and highly experienced, they can definitely spot this. In this mistake, what happens is that the metrics are often shared correctly, but they are shared from memory, not from logic. So people just know that the correct metric for this product is supposed to be this, and therefore they just go and say it in the interview. So these metrics are often not justified at all or have a circular reasoning. For example, I had an interview where we were discussing Facebook's Blue app, and the top line metric that was mentioned was daily active users, which is fine, but the reasoning that was given was that it shows how popular the product is. This is most likely the result of just Googling up what are the top metrics for this product. You came across daily active users, you took it at face value, maybe you understood it to a certain degree, but you did not go deep into understanding why it is that. So my recommendation for this would be to truly understand the meaning of these metrics, and rather than sharing these metrics with your interviewer in a top-down approach, do it in a bottom-up approach. Meaning, what is it about the product and how it is built that makes, let's say, daily active users the right metric to track? And in addition to this, what is daily active user actually tracking? Why is it a good metric? Why is people coming back to this product every single day a good indication of success? And there's a hint embedded inside that sentence. So those are the top 5 mistakes I've seen in product execution questions from over 500 interviews conducted. I hope this video helps you in reflecting on which of these mistakes you might be making so you can take the steps necessary to fix those. And a quick personal note on all of this, I have made all of these mistakes myself as well early on in my career. It really is a learning journey. No one is born in a way where they don't make any of these mistakes. You can definitely be someone who at some point used to make these mistakes, and at another point in time after a lot of learning, you are no longer making these mistakes. I am an example of the same. So I hope this video helps you in some way, and if there's any other topics that you'd like me to cover, please mention it in the comments below and I'll make sure I create a video about those. See you guys on the next one. Bye.